Good evening, everybody. I'm Kelvin Red. Our country has been through so much over the last couple of weeks, and it's been building for quite a while. And so tonight, I wanted to talk about servant leadership. I just really want to break it down and talk about what it's all about. There are a lot of myths out there about servant leadership. Now, there's some of you watching tonight. I have been to your organizations and I have talked about servant leadership. This has been a part of a much larger workshop called Lead Different, not Lead Different Lead, but Lead Different, an introduction to servant leadership. It's a play on Steve Jobs' commercial Think Different. And so I want to come on tonight and share with you about what exactly is servant leadership. Okay. So here's the deal. Um, when I first started as the director of the Center for Servant Leadership at the Pastoral Institute, the very first workshop that I produced or developed was called Lead Different, as I just said. And I would get these phone calls from people, and occasionally I still do. And they say, I want to go on this servant leadership journey. I want you to tell us all about it. And so, in listening to some of these folks, I got the feeling that they thought it was going to be, we're going to get together in kumbaya. Well, servant leadership is a lot deeper than that. And, the higher you go up the organizational food chain, the more responsibilities you're going to have as a leader. So I want to talk about that. What gives me a little credibility about this is that I've been the director of the Center for Servant Leadership at the Pastoral Institute. I worked for a company in Synovus Financial Corp that was voted the best place to work in America back in 1999. So I learned a great deal there. Bill Turner was my mentor for 10 straight years, had a beautiful relationship with him. And I've penned two books. I've written two books on the topic of servant leadership. So I think that gives me some credibility on telling you tonight what exactly is servant leadership. So what I want to do, I want to share my screen. And I'm going to put the definition of servant leadership on my screen. And I want to share with you, and I want to break this down for you, okay? So let's go here. Here we go. Here is the definition of servant leadership. Servant leadership is a lifelong journey that includes the discovery of oneself, a desire to serve others, and a commitment to lead. So now, if we break this down, if we unpack the definition, first of all, we see that it is a lifelong journey. And that means it's a way of life. This is how we're supposed to behave. This is how we live. And this is how we breathe our being, so to speak. Now, if you continue to break this down, the discovery of oneself. You see, that's why this Facebook fan page, the private group on emergenetics, it exists because self-awareness is the most important characteristic of a servant leader. Understanding who you are, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, but at a far deeper level, understanding and knowing your reason for being. So the thing about servant leadership, and I talk about it so much when it comes to self-awareness, is that servant leadership it forces you to look in the mirror. Okay. That's what I love about servant leadership. And so I always ask my clients, what are you passionate about? Like, what are you really, really passionate about? And so you've got to keep in mind that when we talk about passion, in Latin, passion means to suffer. So my question for you, all of you out there who want to embark on the journey toward servant leadership, my question to you is this: what are you willing to suffer for? Because you will. And then here's the next part of that definition: a desire to serve others. Folks, you've got to want to do this. You've got to want to do it. It's not about you any longer when you are in a position of leadership, particularly if you are in a formal position of leadership. See, here's something you got to keep in mind too as a leader, because I think a lot of people get servant leadership mixed up with customer service. No, customer service is often rooted in your level of service that you provide. It is totally two different things, okay? Customer service and servant leadership, they're not the same thing. And then the final part of this definition, and that is what I actually love. You have to have a commitment to lead, a commitment to lead. So think about that. As a leader, think about it. When you get promoted as a leader and you sign up for it, everything goes well for you, right? You get the promotion, you get the title, you probably get a bump in salary, you may get a new office, you get people reporting to you. Depending upon how high you are up on the food chain, you may have a parking spot. That's all fine and dandy. You see, when you're leading and everything is going well, hey, it's no problem. I'll give you my sports reference. When you're up 45-0 going into the fourth quarter, you don't have a care in the world. But when you're down by a touchdown and 2 minutes to go in the ball game, hey, you got to come through then. It's the same way with leadership and servant leadership. A lot of you out there, you want to be on this journey. Well, you can't run from it. You can't. I had somebody to tell me that they didn't want to, they're servant leaders, but they didn't want to have to deal with all the stuff that's happening right now. It doesn't work like that. You can't do that. Servant leadership, you got to keep something in mind. The greatest leaders in the history of this world who were servant leaders, many of them died for a cause. And so when you're at work and you're leading people, okay, you're not managing people, you're leading people. And when you're leading them, you've got to be careful about how you go about it, because at the same time, you have to be in charge of your emotions, and you have to know how to deal with people. Okay, so servant leadership is about treating people well. Okay, and all those other components that I described for you this evening. You can't run from it, folks. Servant leadership, when we're talking about it, we're talking about taking care in the holistic and the well-being of the individual. It's not about you. You can't get on Facebook every day and talk about yourself. Every time something great happens to you, I'm on Facebook. I've got a lot of friends who are on Facebook. I've got friends who are leaders on Facebook, and I'm always interested to see what they post. Particularly if you're like really, really high up on the food chain. Are you posting about yourself, or are you posting about the people who report to you and your organization? Those are just a lot of little things. Servant leadership, it forces you to look in the mirror, but it makes you focus on other people. Okay. So if you would like to know more about servant leadership, I'm available to do workshops. Okay. Lead Different and Introduction to Servant Leadership. But let me just tell you this though. You see this book right here? This was my first book, Stand Tall: Essays on Life and Servant Leadership. Very, very soon, this book will be in its second edition. It may happen sometime in the next 10 to 14 days. Okay. What I did was I had a chapter called Leading in Tough Times. And over the last couple of days, I thought, you know what? I can't publish this book based upon something that happened when the book was first published. So I've spent time and I've rewritten that chapter, and I wanted to reflect what's happening today. So this book, Stand Tall: Essays on Life and Servant Leadership. Let me just say this. Many of you, I think it was like more than 100 of you, you helped me select the new book cover that's coming out. And so I'm very, very appreciative of that. And I'm going to keep you posted, because let me just tell you this. This was my baby. This book is very, very well edited. I'm just a storyteller, okay? But this book is very well edited. It was edited by a best-selling editor, okay? And she actually wrote on the cover for this book, the back cover. So I'm really, really excited about this coming out. But servant leadership, again, it's very, very, very important. You gotta want to do it. And think about it. Once you tell the world you're on the journey towards servant leadership, everybody starts looking at you differently, okay? Influence, that's what it's all about. I want you to join me this Thursday at 12 o'clock, and I'm going to talk about leadership, the differences between servant leadership, which is a way of life, and then we're going to define leadership for you. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you got any questions, put me some comments down there at the bottom of this post, and I'll be glad to answer them. You can give me a call. You can inbox me. But this is very, very important to me, folks. We've got to be able to make sure that we can change our society. And the best way that we can do that is to embark on the journey towards servant leadership A. And you got to ask yourself the question, what can I do to make my community better? And your community may be your home. It could be your neighborhood, your church, the Little League baseball team, the boys club. What can you do in your area to make the world a better place? This is Kelvin Redd. I'm signing off, and hopefully you can join me again on Thursday afternoon at 12 o'clock right here on Kelvin Redd Live.